guys, it's Lance. We are back with another interview, but today we have Eric Dettman, who ran at York High School and also University of Oregon. He is a four-time team champion in cross country. He is a Nike Cross Nationals team champ. He also is a four-time track all-stater. He ran 3:51 in the 1500. He got the DMR High School National Championship, and he also was now the head coach at Lincoln High School in Portland, Oregon. So, what was it like running at a big school like York? What was it like?
It was awesome. I think when I look back on that experience, there's a lot of things that I appreciate. I appreciated that Mr. Newton cared equally about everybody, whether you were kid number one, and I think my senior year we had 221 boys on the team. Cared equally about number 221. And for me, I found a lot of influence, and I was constantly impressed by the Group 6 kids. So those guys who showed up, they weren't necessarily runners at heart, but they wanted to be a part of something that was bigger than them. And seeing those guys, out there working really hard and doing a bunch of quarters or going for a long run and things like that, that was really inspirational. So being a part of that team that had this huge family culture was instrumental in who I was back then and even who I am now as a coach today.
So what was your running background? Did you run before York, or were you just started in high school?
Yeah, that's kind of a funny question. So I went to a K-8 private school in Villa Park, so just down the street from York. And in fourth grade, they had an Olympic day, and that was your opportunity to play basketball or volleyball or go for a run. And we had a couple of other sports that you could participate in. So I'd never really done any type of organized sport. I played baseball for 1 year, I think when I was in third grade. And I decided I'm going to go out for this fourth grade Olympic day. And the running portion of it, we started with a 40-yard dash. And I remember my brother and I got beat by everybody, essentially. And then we're like, okay, let's do 100 yards. And then we got beat again. We're like, well, let's do one lap around the track. And we had this asphalt track that was 200 meters long. And we got beat again. She's like, well, let's go around the school. So that kind of built my passion for running at a longer distance. So when we got into fifth grade, we got a note at school one day that said, if you want to go off cross country, come to the gym tomorrow at 3:30 or whatever time we got out of school. And Matt and I went home and said to our dad, hey, we're going to do this. We're super pumped. And my dad's like, that's great. Do you know what cross country is? And we're like, no, I have no idea, but I just want to do sports. So we showed up the first day. We ended up having to go for a run. Matt and I tried to keep up with the eighth graders and couldn't. We got dropped in that first practice. And I remember Matt coming home and telling my dad, yeah, this isn't for me. I quit. I didn't like losing. And my dad's like, well, you're not going to quit. You made a commitment to this team, and you're going to see yourself, complete this all the way through. And at the end of the year, if you don't like it, then then you can make a decision at that point. But you're gonna hold true to this. And I'm so thankful for that conversation because there's a super valuable life lesson that I learned from that. But it also just helped me realized that I was quickly developing this passion for running. So started in fifth grade. We moved into the York district after our eighth grade year, joined Mr. Newton's camp, and kind of the rest is history in that regard.
So being under the greatest high school cross country coach of all time, what was his expectations? For you guys, not only the top runners like you or all down through 221.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's one of those things that I really appreciated about him is those expectations for all of us were the same. So some of the super simple ones, you had to show up on the first day of practice. So if you weren't there on day one, you weren't on the team. And everybody kind of knew that. And there was a story that he used to share of a kid who was a junior who was his number one returner, and he was in Buffalo or something. And the kid called Miss Newton. He's like, hey, I'm not going to be at practice. My plane got canceled. And Mr. Newton's like, okay, that's great. You can be a team manager. We'll see you your senior year. And the kid ended up taking an overnight bus or something and got to practice on time. But I love that story because regardless of whether you're really awesome or you're brand new to running or you're somewhere in between, he treated everyone the same. Requirements from a practice standpoint, you could be late once, you could be tardy once. The second time, you were a manager. So I appreciated that because it instilled a lot of discipline and being prompt and being there that I really appreciated. And then it was, when you were there, you were expected to give everything that you had. You were expected to be fully bought in and invested in the program. So there was a lot of expectations, and there was a lot of tough, difficult expectations, but that's what created that super special culture. Everybody, was held to the same standard, and everybody was fighting for the same thing.
So, in the movie, Joe Newton was really strict. Like, I remember one part, he had a kid come up and speak, like, apparently you guys, like, walked through a field, like, I remember that. Was he always that strict? Like,
yeah, to an extent, he was definitely strict. I think the thing that Mr. Newton was really great about, though, was he knew who he could be really strict with, and he knew who he needed to lay off of a little bit. So, like Matt and I, he would cuss us out from time to time. He would, get on our case about things from time to time, but he knew that we could handle that, and he knew that we weren't going to be negatively affected from something like that. Whereas another kid who maybe was a little bit more timid or had a shyer personality, Mr. Newton would be more like some TLC. And listen, I'm telling you this because I recognize what you can be, and I see what you're capable of, and I want you to get there. And if you don't do these things, you're not going to get there. So he was really great about, individualizing that type of environment or experience for each kid.
what was your team culture like, both sides? Was it like a shy because you have such a big team, or was it like just a big family?
It was big family, definitely a big family. We did a lot of team bonding activities. So in the summers, we would have our morning workout, and then in the afternoon, we'd go back to York, and we were expected to run some additional miles, and that always turned into an ultimate frisbee game, or playing softball, or a variety of different things, maybe kickball. So that was super fun, and that was something that 50, 60 guys would show up to, and we'd all do that together. Seniors would always host a party at the beginning of the season at one of the parents' houses, and it was just like a big potluck. That was always really fun. That was after our inter-squad meet. We'd have top 7 dinners over the course of the season before some of our big meets. So we had a lot of things where we were interacting as a whole team. We were interacting as a smaller unit. Mr. Newton was really great about bringing everyone together as often as possible, doing team cheers, stuff like that. So, I think one underrated thing that maybe doesn't get talked about all that often with Mr. Newton is he actually, maybe this goes back on the strict thing, but he used to create bus assignments. So we didn't get to choose where we sat. We sat where we were told to, but he always would put people together for a specific purpose. So he might put me with an up-and-coming freshman my senior year, realizing that I want this person to have that mindset, or I want this person to be inspired that I can be that person one day. So everything he did it with a purpose. And I think that helped to build that culture in that family atmosphere.
What was it like being coached by Newton? Just like, when did you realize like Newton was like Joe Newton?
Right away. I mean, the first time he listened or he spoke and I was listening, I got it. And I think that's probably, it's not the workouts per se. It's not the races that I'm going to remember. It's listening to him talk. And, even when I watch the movie from time to time, like I still get chills, and he'll recite some of his quotes, and I know them word from word 20 years later, or maybe not quite 20 years later, but it was just everything that he brought to the table, and how much he cared and how much he loved us. That's what I remember, and I think that's who Mr. Newton was.
So how did Joe Newton help you get from where you are now, like from where you were in high school to where you are now from coaching?
He just taught me a lot about being a really awesome human and trying to be the best version of myself. So at Lincoln, we have 2 kind of big team mantras that we focus on, and we kind of added a new one this year. But they stem from things that Mr. Newton used to say all the time. So those 3 mantras, the first one is love your teammates. The second one is be the best version of yourself every single day. And the third one is wherever you are, be all there. And I love those, and those are the epitome of what I learned from this student because he was so focused on, regardless of whether you're number 220 or number 7, when we're standing on the top of the podium at the state meet, we're all standing there together. And we would drive everybody down to the state meet. We would have a massive cheering section. Or when we'd go to the banquet after the fact, when the season was over, Mr. Newton would talk about every single kid. And he knew first name, last name, nickname, PRs, specific stories. He knew everything about those kids. And that's something I try to emulate now with my program. When we talk about being the best version of yourself, he has quotes all the time that spoke specifically to that. I think the movie opens up with something like, you're going to be a pipe fitter, you got to be the best pipe fitter. You're going to be a plumber, you got to be the best plumber. That mindset should be the mindset of everybody, regardless of what you're going into, whether you're a runner or you're focusing on music or academics. Like, if you have that mindset, if you can look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and be really proud of what you've accomplished on that day, knowing that you did everything you could, that's pretty awesome. And then he was really great about just being in the moment and not taking things for granted. And I think so often now we get tied up into what's coming next. And we're not in the moment when we're sitting at dinner with our parents. And we're not, in the moment when we're taking that test. We're thinking of, if this happens, then I have to do that. Same thing with practice and meets and stuff like that. I think sometimes we get lost in looking ahead. So, trying to focus on those big things, and probably his most famous quote, it's nice to be great, but far greater to be nice. That's something I say to my kids almost daily, because that's the most important piece. Like, if you're really successful and no one likes you because you're a really mean person, well, that's not fun. You don't have anybody to celebrate with. But if you can be a really great person and still be successful, and you have all these people to celebrate with, it makes that experience so much better. So that's a bit long-winded, but hopefully that answered that.
What was it like running for one of the greatest high school running dynasties in U.S. history?
It was awesome. I was someone who really fed off of those expectations. Sometimes the moment is too big for some people, and I think our team did a really good job of channeling some of those emotions and having them fuel us rather than potentially bring us down. But it was exciting, and especially that time when I was there, it had just come off the Don Sage era in '99. He graduated in 2000. The year before I had gotten to York was the worst state meet they'd had in something like 25 years. They were 4th. And I just remember being at some of those practices, and Mr. Newton just talked about it all the time. And we weren't supposed to win as freshmen. My freshman year, we got beat by Lyons Township, I think, 3 times leading up to that meet, the state meet. But the cool thing about that was the 2 times we really focused on wanting to beat them was our conference meet and our state meet, and those were the 2 times that we beat them. And realizing, how amazing that environment is, how much bigger it is than any individual. That's what was most special about it. And you see the entourage that Mr. Newton would travel with to the state meet, and you see all these graduates coming to the state meet and kids sending in phone calls and letters from 15, 20 years earlier. You just know that you're part of something that's really, really special. And that really helped to fuel us when it came to racing.
So, when did you realize you could go to a big school like Oregon, and how did you feel when you knew you had those opportunities?
It was flattering, absolutely. When I started to realize it, I think I thought about it as a freshman. I had run fairly quick as a freshman, and I thought, things continue down this path. There's that possibility, and Mr. Newton was really great at, kind of fostering that idea for us and putting that thought into our heads. So I would say probably my sophomore year, end of my sophomore year, I really started to realize that there's a good possibility of this. And then my junior year, when I started getting phone calls and letters and stuff like that, then it became a reality. And that process was amazing. And it was so fun and flattering to have all these schools think that I was worthy enough to run for them. And taking visits and having those phone calls and learning about the coaches and things like that. That's an experience that I would wish for everybody, because it was really special.
Yeah, just being able to have that opportunity would just be crazy.
Yeah, it's cool. The one thing I tell my kids now, for those of them who are trying to run to the next level, and especially if they're looking at the D1 level, is take all 5 visits. So I only took 4. I didn't take my 5th. And I really wish that I had taken my 5th. If nothing else, just to have that experience and being on that campus and interacting with the guys on the team and potential teammates and things like that. That's not something that's ever going to be replicated again. It's for the majority of us, we're never going to go pro in running, and that's the one time where you kind of sort of feel like professional, where they're taking you around, they're whining and dining you, they're trying to do all these really awesome things for you. It's a cool experience.
So how did faster teammates help you in college? Because you had Jacob Ingebrigtsen and also, not Ingebrigtsen, Matthew Centrowitz, and you had Galen Rupp on your team. Like, how did those guys help you?
It was awesome. People ask those types of questions all the time because I was super lucky. When I think of some of the athletes, the AJ Costas, the Centros, the Leadings, the Ashton Eatons, I was really lucky when I was at Oregon, and they pushed me, obviously from a physical standpoint, as a runner, and workouts were super challenging, and sometimes you'd go for a training run and you think it's going to be an easy day, and next thing you know you're running like 5:20 pace. But they just pushed me more as a person and helping me to develop as like a human being and realize what I'm capable of or maybe what I'm not capable of. And my college career didn't go the way that I wanted to. I wasn't nearly as successful as I wanted to be, but those guys were always there for me, and they were always super helpful. They were always someone that I could reach out to, and they never gave up on me. And if they're not going to give up on me, then I'm not going to give up on myself. I owe a lot to those guys, being at the U of O and learning about myself and how to be a good teammate when things aren't necessarily going the way that I wanted to. It was fantastic. And I think, to take it down another path, I think what's really awesome about that experience too is so often, when somebody says the name Matthew Centrowitz, they think of the gold medal at the Olympics. And that's obviously an amazing accomplishment that he had. But when I think of Matt Centrowitz, I think of him running around on a basketball court acting like an idiot on his recruiting visit. Or I think about like when we went paintballing as a junior and like normalizing some of these people who put in this fairy tale box. That's what I really treasure, is like them as people and those experiences that we had.
What made you coach? Like, did you have like a motivation to coach, or did you just like, I'm coaching?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I had a cousin who was a teacher, and I had always looked up to her, and I'd always thought I wanted to be a teacher, and that's what I went to the University of Oregon to be, and at some point I planned to be a teacher. So I think it was always kind of inside of me that was what I wanted to do. I was super lucky that I had amazing coaches like Mr. Kern and Mr. Newton and Andy Powell when I was at Oregon. And then I think, what really helped me to realize that officially this is what I want to do is I worked at a summer camp when I was at work and every year I was a counselor, and I was overseeing a bunch of high school kids, and I loved it. I mean, I loved every minute of it, and I just kind of soaked up everything I could from the coaches who attended camp and even from the kids and their experience, and putting all those things together, I just knew this is what I want to do. So as soon as I graduated college, I took about a year off from running, and then I jumped into it right away and started coaching.
You said you took a year off. Do you still run? Like, do you still run regularly?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that. So I had a love-hate with running for a while, partially just because my college career didn't go the way I wanted it to, partially because I kept running and I felt like I was getting hurt. But when quarantine started out in Oregon, the first day I was like, I'm going to start running again and kind of see where it takes me. And I'm on day 90 or 91 in a row right now, and loving it. And I built up really slowly, and I'm running like 45 to 50 miles a week right now, and just like really enjoying it. And I don't know where it's going to take me. I don't know if I'm going to race again at some point, but just really loving running again, which is cool because that's not something that's been the case for me for a little while.
Wow, you're blowing my dad out the water. He's going for 40-mile weeks, and he's been running for years. What, 90 days?
That's pretty impressive, though. Well, my goal is to get to 100. So next Friday is my 100th day in a row, and I think I'm going to do a mile time trial, and we'll see what happens with that. And then I'll kind of figure out where I'm going to go from there. Am I going to keep running? Am I going to take some days off? Am I going to up my mileage, or what I'm going to do? So but it's exciting. I mean, I think that's the thing that I really appreciate about it is like I'm excited to go for a run every day again, which is cool.
Yeah. The main reason I'm doing this channel is to help other people, not just me, like to get out the door. Like at the beginning of quarantine, I was having a super hard time, but yesterday we had our first team practice. It just felt amazing, just like to be able to run with other people, like people I haven't seen in like months. It felt super good to be able to run with them again.
I think that that's part of why I started, and I think that's so awesome you said that because like when I started doing some Zoom calls with my kids, doing one-on-ones with them when everything happened, the first thing I asked them is like, 5 years from now, when you look back on this moment, what do you most want to remember about yourself? And then I started thinking, well, if I'm saying that about these kids, like what do I want to remember about myself? And I thought to myself, I want to remember that I did everything I could to try to inspire these kids. So if that meant going for a run and having these kids see me posted on our mileage log that we all use, and if that gets 3 more kids out the door that day, then I think I did a pretty good job of that. So I mean, doing anything you can to continue that inspiration, I think is so important, especially during the time frame that we're in right now.
What is your favorite part about coaching?
Ooh, there's a lot of favorite parts. I think when the light bulb goes off, that's what I really love. When I see a kid who gets it, and they don't have to be super talented. It can be kid number 130 on my team, but then when they realize, like, if I put my mind to this, I can improve quite a bit. I love that. And when you see that in the kids' eyes and they recognize that I want to make this really important in my life, and then they go and do that, I think that that's my happiest moments.
One last question for you. Do you ever get like your house swarmed for autographs, or like when you go out to the mall or something, do you ever get swarmed for autographs for your movie star?
No, not any. No, I think maybe if social media was a thing when the movie had originally come out, like that maybe would have been something that potentially could have happened. But occasionally somebody will come up to me and say like, "Oh my gosh, you were in the movie" or something like that. But I don't get any publicity from that.
So you never get your house broken into for an autograph or anything?
No, can't say I've had that happen. I did, now that I think about it, I had somebody ask me for an autograph at a meet like 2 years ago, and I like wrote it on their arm or something. I was like, this is kind of silly, but I think that's the only time that's really happened. I'll get occasional messages on like Facebook or Instagram or something like that now, but even that's kind of few and far in between at this point.
Well, thank you so much for doing this with me.
Yeah, of course. Hopefully this is helpful.
Yeah, it helped a lot. We got a lot, this will help other people get a lot more information. Like you said, people see Centuwitz as, like, the famous runner, but you see him as a friend. Like, we get different perspectives on people.
Yeah, and Lance, this is super cool what you're doing. Like, super, super cool, and I'm hopeful that you get a lot of people for watching this, because I think it's really helpful for anybody. Yeah, regardless of whether you're an elite runner, a beginning runner, maybe thinking about running, I think it's really awesome.
I'm enjoying doing it. Like, I may not be helping a ton of people, but the small amount of people, at least I'm still helping a bit. So
yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect attitude.
Yeah. Like I said, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I feel honored.
See ya.